Thank you for joining us for our first ever podcast called Spark a Soul Podcast. We have a really honorable guest here. Her name is Madeline Jhawar. She is the owner of Italy and Beyond, and she's here to share with us her spark and how she managed to bring her passion as her mission by just doing what she loved. So before we dive in and turn the floor over to Madeline, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of kind of an outline of what Spark a Soul is. This is a platform where we bring on guests who want to share their story about what their spark has been to become more of who they are. Really, it's about this individual who strived really hard through hurdles and challenges to become the person that they want to be and who they're happy to be. So again, it's all about your journey. It's all about what matters to you and what you have become to spark. So hope you guys are ready, and here we go. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Madeline. And let's start off with saying, hey, Madeline, nice to have you here.
Hi, so nice to be here. Let me clarify, my business is Italy Beyond the Obvious.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. What did I say?
Italy and Beyond.
My apologies. There you go, Italy Beyond.
That's okay.
So let's start off with saying, who is Madeline? Let's hear more about you.
Oh my gosh. I am originally Canadian. I grew up in Edmonton, in northern Canada, to a kid of a university professor and a university administrator. My mother, she was the director of development, and she instilled in my brother and I just this love of other cultures and travel and other languages. And, you know, I grew up having exchange students in the home. We were always hosting somebody, whether it was for a weekend or for a year. We always had some exchange student in our home. And she just, put me in French immersion at the age of 5, which, when you're 5, you don't have really a say in that. I was just sent to French immersion. And, that really taught me about just the how language opens up culture and how learning another language just connects you to another culture. And it made me more curious about other cultures. So when I had opportunities to sign up for a foreign exchange myself, it was an exciting thing. I was like, yeah, I know how to learn a language. I'm curious about other cultures and the way other people do things, and how, my way isn't necessarily the right way or the only way, but everything from crossing the street to how we eat, to how we interact with families, to concepts where there's a word in another language for something that we don't even have in English. And so it created that whole kind of mentality of, eliminating the us versus them, really, and just trying to have that curiosity about how other people think and solve problems. And that really paved the way for where I am today, I think, with a travel business. But I didn't get here on a straight and clear path. It was very windy and not at all. In hindsight, it all makes sense. But when I was on it, there were a lot of times where I was like, where am I going? What am I doing? Why am I here? I hate this,
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So it makes me curious to understand, when you were that child at 5 years old, when your environment kept on constantly changing, how did that make you feel?
I would say, growing up in Edmonton, my environment was pretty stable in the sense that I was in the same house, I was in the same school district, we didn't move. In hindsight, Edmonton is it's an amazing city to grow up in. But you have to take an airplane to leave. Like, the Rocky Mountains were the closest thing to us, and it was kind of a 4-hour drive. And really, there wasn't anywhere to go, before, closer than that. So we would go to the Rocky Mountains we'd go camping, we'd go skiing. My father was he was one of these hardcore, he would go climb glaciers. And so I grew up, we went camping and skiing. And that was just, my mom put her foot down and she was like, no more of this. When we go skiing, I need a hot tub or, that's it, but I grew up thinking that camping was terrible. It was full of glacier streams and where you got eaten alive by mosquitoes during the day and it was freezing at night and you eat this dried food and this UHT milk. And I just thought camping was, torture. And then now I appreciate it. Now I live in California where camping is amazing. I mean, it's like comfortable and beautiful and you don't get eaten by bugs and we go to places with running water and it's fantastic. So I don't mean to diss my parents, but it's just, I appreciated the experience in hindsight.
I guess it shaped, like you said, that's who you became today, through all these different adventures and experiences that you've gone through. That's amazing. So when you said that you were surrounded by different cultures that was kind of shaping you as a person, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like what type of cultures and what resonated the most?
Yeah, I think, so we had a Swiss exchange student who stayed with us for a year, and she was really, at that point, I had not really traveled. We'd gone, across Canada in the station wagon, 4 days to Toronto, and then a week in Toronto, and then 4 days back. We'd driven to Minnesota to visit my grandparents, and again, 4 days in the station wagon, 2 weeks in Minnesota, 4 days back. But I hadn't been overseas, and I remember having this Swiss exchange student. She was from Zurich, and she my brother and I asked her whether they had microwaves in Switzerland, and she just laughed at us and she was like, what do you think Switzerland is? And I just realized, I was like, wow, later looking at the time, I asked that question out of curiosity, and later looking back, I was like, you just don't know when you haven't been anywhere. And then I had the opportunity to go to Tokyo when I was 15 and stay in another family. And I just remember, I was the guest, and so they let me use the clean bath water first. So I got to have a bath in the clean bath water, and then I got out of the bath, and then the rest of the family in the same bath water that I used. And, so it was kind of gradual. I remember the Colombian exchange student in particular. We had, Edmonton is a big hockey. This was Edmonton in the 80s. This was Wayne Gretzky and Marc Messier, and we were, winning the Stanley Cup. And so we were a huge hockey town, and soccer was just kind of almost an afterthought. And for some reason, Edmonton was hosting some kind of big soccer tournament, and I don't even know what it was, but it was a worldwide, thing. And the Colombian team was coming, and we had this Colombian exchange student, and my mom was like, welcome everyone, come to our house. So we literally had I don't know, more than 20. These exchange students just kept arriving, and they kept ringing our doorbell, and they brought sleeping bags, and we had wall to wall, sleeping bags, exchange students in sleeping bags, all in our house. And my mom went to Costco and bought a giant tray of muffins and bought a giant, just bought tons of food and just put it in the kitchen. And these guys they went to the game, and they took buses, and they were 18, they took public transportation, they got themselves to the game. And those Colombians made more noise in that soccer stadium than all of the Edmontonians who were cheering. They were like, rah, 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 go Edmonton. And the Colombians were going totally nuts. And there were, 100 of them or something. So I just remember that's really me, that's that South American passion, and especially for football, for soccer. But experiences like that just made me curious. And I went to live in Italy then as an exchange student for a year. And that's where the whole Italy path started.
Wow. Okay. Tell me a little bit more about Italy Beyond. How did you come up with that, and how did that become your new thing or your passion?
So, Italy Beyond the Obvious was actually born in 2008 after I had been um, helping friends and family with their Italy vacations for 10 years. So, I ended up spending 5 years in Italy. I was an exchange student, and then I went to university, and then I went to work as a nanny, and then I came home, and then I got a job in corporate America at a oh no, then I went to be a tour guide. I guided hiking and biking tours for Butterfield and Robinson for about a year and a half. It was 3 biking seasons, so it was kind of the May, June, and then September, October, and then another, well, April, May, June. And then I was totally, I had, my clothing was covered in bicycle grease, and I had no address, and I was like, that's a fantastic job when you're 23, 24, but it's exhausting. So I was like, I'm ready to move on. And one of my clients hired me. She was like, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I'd like to get into international operations because I want to go back to Italy and I'm curious about business. And, my parents were in academia and I thought business was like exciting and sexy from the outside. And so I just kind of threw out this, I want to get into international operations without really knowing what that was. Like it sounded good. And as it turned out, this client who was on my biking trip, she had introduced herself to everybody as the pastor's wife. She was like, my husband's a pastor, I'm the pastor's wife. As it turned out, she was the COO of a $13 billion company. And
Wow.
she was like, come and work for me. She's like, I've seen how hard you work. You've done, they had actually done 2 trips with me. They had done a Tuscany 8-day biking trip. And then as it coincidentally turned out, they were on my next trip, which was a hiking trip down the Ligurian coast in Italy. The Cinque Terre area is famous, and so part of that trip was the Cinque Terre. So they had been with me on both of those trips, and she was like, whenever you're ready, come work for me. So I took a little bit of a detour. I spent 8 years in corporate America, moved to New York, got trained. And I really, I was planning Italy trips on the side. I was the go-to person. I had lived in Italy. I was not only that, I had guided hiking and biking tours. So I kind of knew, what the these were 5-star tours. I was staying in 5-star hotels. We were doing all of the touristy things. We were eating at Michelin star restaurants. So I knew how to create an amazing Italy trip. And I was just helping friends and family. And I said to my company, I'm ready to go back to Italy. I'm whenever they're ready for me. So after my training finished in New York, my company was like, we're not quite ready for you. How would you like to go to Sweden? And I was like, sure, that sounds good, So I relocated to Stockholm for a 2-year assignment where I had a Nordic role. So I was constantly going between, I was based in Stockholm and I went to Helsinki, Oslo, and Copenhagen all the time for work. And that was fantastic. It was one of those phases in life where I had a professional income, no kids, no dependents, and fell into a group of amazing friends who we were all expats. We all had professional salaries. Nobody had dependents or kids. And boy, did we have fun. I mean, we would go off and stay in the ice hotel in northern Sweden for a weekend. We took the ferry over to the party ferry over to Helsinki, where basically most people get on the ferry and start drinking. And then the ferry stays in Helsinki and you sleep during the day and then you go back and drink all night. But I was like, I want to see Helsinki. So I'm like, we are not going to, get plastered and not see Helsinki. But we just did. So we went to Estonia, we went to St. Petersburg. I mean, we just had the best time. And then my boss was like, okay, Italy's ready for you. I was like, and my Swedish boss even said, we'll hire you. Like, you can leave corporate America, leave your New York job and come and work for us as a Swedish employee. And that that was a tough thing to turn down, but my expat package was so great. I mean, I had plane tickets home, they paid for my apartment, I had a car, I had someone doing my taxes, they paid for my cell phone bill. Like, it was a nice package. So I was like, I don't think I'm gonna turn away from this. And Italy was ready for me. So I said goodbye to Stockholm. And I've always said, like, if Stockholm weren't as cold, it would be as popular as Paris. I mean, have you been to Stockholm? Have you been to Sweden at all?
I actually haven't. I actually lived in Europe and I was hoping to go to Sweden, but never had the chance. But I heard it's really beautiful. It seems like a dream. As you describe it, it seems like a dream, a beautiful place to live in.
It's an amazing place to live in. Yeah. And again, before I moved to Sweden, the CEO of the company came to congratulate me, and I was very junior. I was 7 levels below him, and he came to congratulate me on my assignment. And he said, I lived in Denmark for years and I never learned Danish. And he said, don't expect that you're going to learn Swedish. It's just too difficult. And I was like, that was the perfect thing to say to me, because I am going to show you, and I just had this fire under my butt that I was going to learn Swedish. And I was so determined, and I would just speak Swedish to my colleagues. I learned how to say, 10 words, and I was just absolutely determined to learn Swedish. And again, it opens up a whole new culture. I mean, the Swedes speak English really well, a lot of them, and they would just flip in, and they wanted to practice their English, right? And so they would just flip into English. I had an advantage in that I guess I had a good ear or something, but they couldn't recognize my accent. So I didn't have a really typical American or Canadian accent, I guess, because they didn't know where I was from. So they didn't flip into English with me. Like some of my friends who were trying to learn Swedish, they just couldn't, because every time they would speak, the person they were speaking to would start speaking English to them. Whereas people were a little bit confused by me. And so they would speak Swedish back to me. So that was a huge advantage.
Yes, I mean, that sounds like an adventure. Your life is full of an adventure. You've been pretty much around the world and living in different parts. That sounds honestly sounds like a dream to me, Madeline. So if I were to take a step back and ask you, there comes a point in anyone's life, my life, everyone, us humans, where we doubt our skills to become this, mission-driven person that wants to achieve most important things in their life. Have you ever hit any spots in your life where you just kind of stopped and said, I don't know if this is meant for me, or I don't know if I can do this, or, in this journey to become your, Italy beyond, dream job? So yeah, did you hit any challenges in that point where you just felt like, this was really hard?
Oh my gosh, so many. Which one should I pick? I think the biggest time of doubt was when I started Italy Beyond the Obvious. So in 2008, I just had 2 kids. So I had a kid in 2004, a kid in 2006, and I was totally immersed in child rearing. And I had left that corporate job when I had my daughter, because by that time we were living in Boston and I was in a global role where I was traveling all the time. And my region was like Malaysia and Hong Kong and Reno, Nevada. It was a weird region, but it was too much travel. And I was like, I can't do this with 2 little kids. So, and I was still planning these Italy trips for people on the side. And I thought, and I wanted to do something. And so I thought, I wonder if anyone will pay me to do this for them. And I looked into becoming a travel agent. And, travel agents make money through commissions. And the way that they get commissions is that they sell other people's products. So, the vendor will say, I have a 10-day package to Italy and it's $5,000 a person. And if you sell it to your client, then I'll give you $500. And I was like, I don't want to sell other people's products. I want to create trips for people the way I'd create them for myself, the way I've been creating them for friends and family. And I also just left this really nice corporate job and I need to get paid for my time. So I just put up a website and I just was like, here's how much I charge. I'm charging like a consultant. I don't want commissions because I'm not selling other people's products. I'm recommending to the customer what I think is going to be the best fit for them. And I didn't know if it was going to work. I had no idea. I was not a travel agent. I didn't know of anybody else who was just charging consulting fees for advice. And I also, my fees are high. I mean, they actually, because they're separated out, the client sometimes is like, what? But if you look at the whole package and then you look at what the commissions that are all built in, I'm actually not more expensive, but it seems like it because I pull everything out and it's all transparent. And I didn't know if anybody would pay me. I didn't know if this was going to work. I had no idea how people were going to find me. I wasn't sure. Also, it took me a few years to finesse the service and to offer people what they wanted, because at first I was like, I'll do whatever you want. And then people were like, then that's a slippery slope. Then that just ends up being time consuming, and one person wants this and another person wants that. And if you put the burden on the customer to say, I'll do whatever you want, then it seems like you don't know what you're doing, right? They're like, well, you're the expert. Like, you should tell me how this goes. And so, I really had to get the confidence and another thing is that the confidence was a huge piece, because my, approach was like, I'm going to showcase myself as an expert. I'm going to show you that I'm such an Italy expert, and I'm going to write all these blog posts, and I'm going to have all this information about Italy on my website, and you're going to think I'm an expert and you're going to hire me. Well, nobody hired me. They just read all my articles because I wasn't confident enough to step out and say, hire me. This is what I charge. This is my value. This is what I can do for you. This is why I'm going to make an amazing Italy trip for you. I didn't do that. I just wrote a blog post that showcased my Italy expertise. And I had a little teeny tiny sentence at the bottom that said, if you would like me to help you plan your Italy trip, contact me, something like that. And I really, it was scary for me to step out behind that wall of words, I guess, and say, this is me, this is who I am, this is why I'm great, this is why you should pay me, this is why it's worth it. And that was not, now I actually coach people on setting up travel businesses. And I say to them from day one, you got to say, this is a business and this is what I charge, and don't apologize for, charging for your expertise and for your time, because you're giving people a lot of value. But that was definitely a big, a tough lesson.
Yeah, I can imagine being in the early stages of a mom, starting up your own business is hard enough, and then getting clients is much more challenging than you can imagine. I love how you said, to a point, you were trying to sell your business, but you realized that confidence in selling yourself and your expertise is the number one when it comes to, reaching people or potential clients. What made you realize that it was your expertise that was going to sell?
People kept telling me again and again, and it was really the first few, I've been doing this for friends and family on the side. So I had a lot of feedback where I knew what people really valued, and the people I tend to attract and the people that are a good fit customer for me are people that want to connect with the culture. So I don't do a lot, I do high end, but luxury these days is really about choice and about access, and less about red carpets and helicopters and yachts. And the people I work with want to get to know the locals, and maybe that means, and they want to connect with the culture, and maybe that means that they'll pay a lot of money for something like a behind the scenes tour of the Vatican, or something like a hot air balloon ride over Tuscany. But they also might equally choose to spend $30 and go visit the sheep farmer who makes cheese. And so it's not necessarily about money, it's about my ability to understand what the customer wants and then match them with the experience that is a best fit for them. And that's a different, when I first started coaching people on how to set up travel businesses, I said, one of the things people always think is surprising is that I start by saying it's not about sharing your favorite things. You know, you might have your favorite things, but it's about understanding what your client wants. Maybe your client is traveling with an infant. Maybe your client is a university professor who has a PhD in Renaissance history, right? Like, you need to pair the client with the things that they value and want, and the pace of the trip is also, you know, you might want to go, or you might not. You might want to lie by the pool, but your client wants to go. And so it's very important to just match that. And that's why selling like those package trips just never resonated with me, because I was like, I need to tailor this to the client. And that's the kind of approach that, you know, when you asked how people could value my experience, that's the kind of approach that really makes the trip. It means that I can spend time on things that really allow people to connect with the culture. So for example, it could be a day where you don't need to spend any money, but I tell you, wake up at your hotel, drive 20 minutes to this little town, and here's where you park. And then you need 2 hours in this town. And while you're in the town, go to this bakery. And when you get to this bakery, order this thing because this pastry is delicious. And then get back in the car and it's 20 minutes to the next town. And here's where you park. And then here are a few cafes that you might like to look at for lunch. You know, it's that kind of thing where I'm getting paid for my time to put together the logistics and the recommendations, but there isn't like anything that I'm quote unquote selling, you know.
Yeah, it's more like you're sharing your experience and creating an experience for them. I love it. I love how you transition from the beginning of selling to expertise and experiences as the most important part of your business. So Madeline, if I was supposed to take a step back and ask you again, how fulfilled are you with now, you know, taking your passion of traveling and experiences and making that into like a business for you or your new identity? How fulfilling is that for you?
So the thing that is most fulfilling for me right now is making other travel experts successful in their travel businesses. So Italy Beyond the Obvious is 13 years old. To be honest, in about 2018, I was totally burned out. I was completely burned out. I was a control freak. You know, these are very white glove trips, and I rely on checklists, and I have probably 20 to 30 checklists for an average 2-week trip, because every hotel has a checklist, every restaurant has a checklist. You know, in terms of research, I propose it to the client, get the quote, book it, put it in the itinerary, you know, all that. And I was holding on to the details, and I would not release them to my assistant, who I had trained to basically do her work and then check with me, and then do her work and then check with me. And so I was the bottleneck, and I was so burned out. And I would sit down at my desk in the morning in high season where I knew I had 10 hours of work ahead of me. And I would look at all the checklists that I had to get through, and I would immediately feel exhausted. And so I got a coach. I got a mentor and a business coach, and I learned to document everything I did, let my assistant do her job without checking with me, release the control. And so right now, Italy Beyond the Obvious is actually a team-run company. So we have a 5-step process. And so I get to do the fun part, which is talking to the client and doing the creative itinerary creation. And then I hand it over to my team, and they take care of the dominoes that fall. And what happened is that that allowed me to get to what my true passion is today, which is helping other travel experts create their own online travel business. And I was getting requests from people for a decade before I did anything about it. I would get people contacting me and saying, "You have my dream job. Teach me how to do what you do." And I believe a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm not about secrets. I'm like, I would love for you to be successful. Here's what you do. And I wrote so many emails over the years that I didn't even realize, but I had compiled this body of instructions And so once my Italy business was more off my plate, I thought I'm going to make this video course for people. And then I have it in one course where people write me and they say, teach me how to do what you do. I'm like, right, I've got an 8-step process. Here are the videos. So I created those and put everybody into a Facebook group. I was like, as you guys are working through the videos, let me support you. Let me see what you need. And then when the pandemic hit and my Italy trips got canceled, I went into that Facebook group and I said, I'm free. I have no Italy trips. How can I help you? And they said, we want a certification program. We want a stamp of approval from you for our hard work. And it's been so satisfying to see. And it's selfish on my part too, because I now have certified travel experts that I can send my Italy clients to when they say, who else does what you do? Which I get all the time. Who else does what you do for other countries? And so now I have this group of certified travel experts where I'm like, well, I've got New Zealand and I've got France and I've got all these certified travel experts that I know, I certified them. The bar is high. And it's been, people said to me, oh, you're creating competition, because I have people who do Italy, and I think that there's so much potential. I think there's enough work for everyone. The customer that resonates with, my travel expert who, the customers they'll resonate with me for one reason and with someone else for another reason. And I'm just happy for their success.
Beautiful. I can see in everything that you're saying, it's such a genuine journey. It's not just about you and what you learn. You want to make sure that someone else can live their dream job just like you have. So a curious one, in this whole, from your childhood to where you are right now, where you've been exposed to different cultures, being in different teams, a lot of things that has happened. Where would you say was your biggest spark, that light that lit up in your head and said, this is what's meant for me, or this is what I'm going to do?
I think the biggest spark is when I have an Italy client who I work with my Italy clients for like a year, right? Because they hire, or maybe 9 months, and the biggest sort of most satisfying spark is when they come back. I had one client in 2019, I guess, come back and just say, it's when they feel it, when they say, wow, she said, I want to move to Italy. And she just said, I had no idea. It's when I can help someone else make that connection to the culture, where they just appreciate the landscape and the food and the people and the art and whatever it is, when I help them make a connection to another culture that they didn't have before they found me, that to me is the biggest, that fuels the spark. And even my travel students, when they find me and they're like, you can teach me how to not be a travel agent and use my deep expertise and make money, like that to me also is, I'm in the right place, like I'm doing what I'm meant to do.
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely. I would love to get feedback like that from clients who just say, you're my girl, you know what you're talking about. You were able to convince someone to move to Italy. That sounds like an amazing spark. Absolutely. So the last question for you, Madeline, is, it's a really important one for our viewers as well. So for someone who's passionate about something in their life, let it be sports, let it be travel, let it be anything that they love, what advice or what tip would you tell them to move their passion into a mission to do what they love as a part of their life, and not just kind of let go at that point of their life thinking they can't believe in themselves or not? Like, what would that tip that you would give them?
So I got a great piece of advice really early on, and I'm a very practical person. I'm not someone who's going to quit my corporate job and move overseas at the drop of a hat. Like, I think about things, I consider things, I weigh pros and cons, I take one step forward and then I look around, and then I take another step forward and then I look around. I would never say, just ditch everything and make the leap. But what I would say is, again, this piece of advice I got is, things were when I was building my Italy business, and there's a lot, when you build an online business, it's not like when you open a brick and mortar store where you can put up balloons and put up a sign that says grand opening and you open your doors. Like when you launch an online business, nobody notices, right? Like you can publish your website and like nobody notices, which takes the pressure off. So that's a positive, but it's also hard as a solopreneur to keep that momentum and keep that energy and keep putting one foot in front of the other and solve the problem of how am I going to get online payments, and solve the problem of where am I going to put my checklist, and solve the problem of what's my customer agreement. And when you're working on that, it can be very hard to keep the motivation up. And I struggled with, why am I doing this? Is this going to work? This is so much work. Who's ever going to hire me? Am I going in the right direction? And my mother has a friend who's a judge, and he said to me, when you get frustrated and you get tired, he said, you can slow down. And he said, go as slow as you need to go. But he said, don't stop. And I always kept that in mind. And so when I was frustrated and I was tired and I was busy with my kids and I was exhausted, I just didn't stop. I was like, what is the one thing I can do to just make one step forward, just go one step forward, just so I don't stop. And that was huge. That was really, really, really valuable advice.
I love it. Take it slow and steady and don't stop. That's a beautiful way to sum it up, Madeline. Really appreciate that. Well, thank you for being a part of the episode today. I loved how you shared all your experiences from childhood to around the world to where you are right now and your spark. So just really, really grateful for all that, Madeline. So we hope to have you again for another episode and talk a little bit more about where your life is going or heading.
This has been so fun. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm honored to be your first.
Absolutely. Thank you.